Declare our meeting in session, and we would ask the Honorable Nick Shealy to ask our invocation and pledge of allegiance.
God of peace, we invite you to preside over this meeting. Even if we have different opinions, give us unity of spirit. Help us to each listen politely as others share their points of view. Help us to work as a unified team in combining ideas for a great outcome. May we have a spirit of camaraderie in this room and work together on our shared mission.
Yes, Lord.
All this we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Item number 1 on our agenda is the additions, deletions, and adoptions of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
None.
None. Hearing none, is there a motion that we adopt the agenda as published? Motion by Mr. Shealy, second by Ms. Airwood. Is there a discussion? Hearing none, all in favor by show of hands. Opposed likewise. Carries unanimously. Item number 2 on our agenda is the public appearances, and we would like to welcome Stephen Knapp and the Newberry Museum presentation. So would you come forward, please, sir?
All right, well, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Just so you know, I do have a small PowerPoint to kind of go along with the talk so that you don't have to just look at my bearded face when I'm talking to you. So what I'd like to do for you this evening is first introduce myself. I am Stephen Knapp. I'm the brand new executive director of the Newberry Museum. I've been here now about to hit 3 months, I think. Kind of as a way of introducing myself, I thought I'd tell you how I got here. Because one of the phrases I've heard ever since I moved here was that all roads lead to Newberry. And I thought, oh, gee, that's a funny quote. And the longer I've been here, the more I keep finding out it's true. I grew up in western North Carolina. My dad's family goes back up in Madison County, North Carolina, about all the way to the 1780s. And I moved down here moved up here from Mississippi, where I was working on my PhD, and got to talking to my mom about it, because when I was in the museum one day, I saw this picture of a guy named Levi Folk. And I was like, I've heard of that guy before. So I called Mom. Turns out I'm direct descendant of the Folks out of Palmaria. And then it turns out that the place that I moved to Newberry from in Mississippi, which was near a little community called Crawford, which was also close to a community called Beth Eden, was settled by a bunch of people from Newberry County. We've got all the same names down there. Beth Eden, Mississippi was founded by the Lutheran pastor of Beth Eden in Newberry County. So all roads do indeed lead to Newberry County. But what I wanted to kind of talk to you tonight about was the value of the Newberry Museum to Newberry County and all the stuff that we are doing over at the Newberry Museum. So the first big part of what we do is preservation. For any of us in museums and history, this is one of the big goals, is preserving not just the artifacts, but the stories. Because an artifact is not just an object, it's a story. They tell of the people from this county who came before us, and these stories give us roots and grounding, but they also teach us about from whence we came and help us to understand our present and prepare for our future. Prior to the museum's founding, many artifacts and the stories they tell were either being donated or sold out of the county. One primary example to use is I have heard a story that there was a Spanish helmet found on the grounds of what is now Newberry College that may have come from DeSoto's expedition. Unfortunately, it ended up in the Smithsonian, which, as a historian, love the Smithsonian, but if you send an artifact there, it's probably going to end up somewhere in a warehouse and you're never going to see it again. I am starting the effort to try to figure out what we can do to maybe track that down if it did indeed make it to the Smithsonian. But at the Newberry Museum, all of the artifacts and stories of Newberry County now have a safe and permanent home here in Newberry County, where they can be properly cared for by a dedicated staff and made accessible to the people and institutions. Some of the ones we have there is we have exhibits dedicated to each municipality in the county. We are also working on preserving a 1757 wedding indenture and a World War I era service flag. And that's just a small portion of all the artifacts. I just got back from a trip a few weeks ago having a Civil War musket worked on so that it could be preserved for us. So we're working very hard to make sure that all of these artifacts are preserved and have a good home here in Newberry County. Part of this is not just artifacts. As I said, it's stories. As a museum, we are constantly working to research the history of Newberry County and find those stories which kind of eventually start to fade from memory over time. One of the more recent ones, right when I got here, was the story of Henry Bluford. He was one of Newberry County's first African-American police officers and was actually killed in a riot down on Nance Street. Or I believe back then it was McKibben Street, if I'm correct. I'm learning that the streets move. But we are rediscovering parts of our history. We are currently working at the museum to also research a possible African-American who served in one of the first African-American regiments during the Civil War. He went from here to Buford. In North Carolina, we say Beaufort, and I'm constantly corrected, so I'll get it right eventually. Who walked from here all the way to Beaufort and joined the Union Army during the war. And so we're just constantly working to try to uncover the stories of Newberryans so that they can be preserved for future generations. After preservation comes education. We don't want to just hoard these stories for ourselves. We want to get them out to the county. So through our exhibits, through our programming, we seek to outreach to all Newberryans so that they can appreciate this history for themselves. So we bring in groups of all ages. We brought in some Girl Scouts at one point. Just last week, we had about 30 kids from a YMCA camp. But then we also work to appeal to lifelong learners. Not just kids, we want to appeal to adults and seniors, to everybody. So we're constantly working to develop programs and exhibits that will appeal to everyone in Newberry County. And then there's the other vital mission of the museum, which is the economic part. We don't just want to teach, we want to draw people to Newberry County. And we do this in several ways. We do this through our corporate and business partnerships, and we do this also through heritage tourism. Through corporate partnerships, the museum works with local businesses and industries to showcase their value to the community. Visitors to the museum are not only introduced to the industries that have existed here in the past, but they are also shown the modern and expanding economic possibilities of Newberry County. Through these partnerships, these businesses gain exposure to potential customers and to investors. But perhaps even bigger than those partnerships is heritage tourism. And I thought of an analogy as I was walking over here. Heritage tourism is like catch and release fishing. It draws people into the county, they spend their money in the county, and then they leave. So it works out brilliantly for us because we're not having to build new infrastructure to handle these visitors to Newberry County, but it brings people in so that they can truly enjoy this. I have a few quotes on the slide about heritage tourism from various institutions. But to give a short explanation of it, it is one of the fastest growing forms of tourism today, and it focuses primarily on local histories, culture, and art. People who are interested in heritage tourism, they want to see the history. They want to see the culture. They want to see what is life like in a particular place. And Newberry, due to its location, the fact that we have just a beautiful county, is quickly starting to draw many people in to experience what Newberry County has to offer. Studies by national and state institutions show that heritage tourism brings more visitors and economic potential to local communities than any other form of tourism. According to a study done by the U.S. Department of Commerce and the President's Committee on the Arts and Humanities in 2005, over 81% of U.S. tourists who traveled more than 50 miles from home were heritage tourists. The study went on to point out that heritage tourists are more likely to spend more money in the local community and more likely to use local hotels and also likely to just stay longer. With the easing of COVID lockdowns and restrictions, this increase in heritage tourism is only growing nationwide. And the Newberry Museum seeks to capitalize on this increase and bring more of it to Newberry County. Through our exhibits, our programs, and also the increasing amount of audio-visual exhibits we are working on bringing, the museum appeals to all levels of the modern museum audience. And through those partnerships with corporations and businesses, we direct visitors to the numerous cultural, culinary, and commercial opportunities throughout the county. To show you what we are doing, since I first interviewed for my position in April, the museum has had over 2,000 visitors. Many of these visitors are from Newberry County, but an increasing number are actually coming from other parts of the state and also from out of state. When I checked the visitor log for August, we had India, Australia, and the United Kingdom. So we are getting visitors not just from the U.S., but from all over the world. And I just hate that I missed some of them because I was down in the collections room working on stuff and I didn't get to meet these folks. But we are certainly starting to be a draw. And when the visitors come to the museum, we encourage them to not stop there. I would wager that about 3/4 of our out-of-town visitors use the museum as a de facto visitor center. They ask us where are the best places to shop, where are the best places to eat, and where also can they go and see some of the stuff we talk about in the museum for themselves. So if I encounter visitors in the museum who are particularly interested in the German history of Newberry County, I send them to Pomeria. If they're interested in the railroads, I send them to Peak. Because I don't want visitors to just stop at the Newberry Museum. I want them to go out and see everything in the county. So whenever I'm up on the gallery and I'm talking to people, I try to send them out to see all this stuff. Because especially for me as a history nerd, we've got great history in this county and I want people to be able to see it. I lost track of my slides because I got carried away. So basically that's all that I just said. So what does all of this mean for Newberry County? This means that our history and our artifacts are not leaving. We're able to keep them and preserve them here without them going out of the county. For local businesses, this provides a draw for potential customers. It provides for investors in the county who are often looking to see what is the quality of life, and they often measure that by what type of activities can you do, museums, libraries, parks. It provides them to know that we are providing a good quality of life for potential employees. And it also just provides a place where, as I put it, the county can show off. At the museum, we like to brag on Newberry County. And so we want to be able to show as many of these stories, these artifacts, and even the modern people, and really just brag about all that we have to offer. And it shows the outside world that Newberry County is a place that not only values its history and culture, but it values its modern day people as well. As I close my talk for you, I just wanted to add a few personal remarks. I have worked in museums pretty much my entire life. The first museum I volunteered at was a little place in Asheville, and I was 6 years old. I volunteered to sweep the floors, and they let me. But I've been active in museums since the age of 6. I've been a historian ever since I got my bachelor's, and I'm now wrapping up work on the ye old PhD. And I've at least visited and worked in probably hundreds of museums of all sizes. I've worked at small local museums like the Smith McDowell House in Asheville, North Carolina. I've worked for the Tennessee State Parks. And I have never seen a museum staff, board, and volunteers who are as passionate and professional as the folks at the Newberry Museum. They accomplish so much, even when compared with museums that have a budget that's 1,000 times ours. I feel like we're doing more because we're not static. We have no intention of putting up an exhibit and then just letting it sit there. We want to brag about it. We want to add to it. We're about to start expanding our military exhibit. It's not a static place, and in the museum world, that is actually quite a rare thing. So the Newberry Museum is constantly moving and improving itself, which is just something that for me to be a part of it is just immensely inspiring and exciting. They've also at the museum headed off so many of the problems that other museums have. We have a great curator and great volunteers who are working to make sure that everything is properly assessed and documented and preserved, that other museums I know would probably cut off their right arms for. We have a great staff. And so I'm immeasurably proud to be a part of the Newberry Museum because it is just a wonderful place. And it is with that closing thought or thoughts that I would like to personally invite all of you out to the Newberry Museum. If you call ahead, I'll make sure I'm available, or you can just ask the nice people at the front desk and they'll call down and I'll come running out of the collections room and I'll be glad to give you a walk around and give you a nice tour of everything the museum has to offer. So I really invite all of you to visit it and really see this crown jewel of Newberry County. So thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have our esteemed assessor who's going to come and talk to us about the agricultural building tax exemption. So,
everybody always says, thank you for having me. I don't know. I hope y'all are doing okay. I'm not sure Christopher forwarded you a memo from the Department of Revenue. So what we have is a exemption. It doesn't change the ag use laws, but it exempts the ag buildings and farm structures. But the way the exemption was written, it doesn't really give us any meat. Most exemptions, they require you to apply for the exemption, so we don't have that. And then if you read the caption or the heading for this law, the part about this exemption says was to provide a property tax exemption for certain farm buildings. It didn't say for all farm buildings, so certain ones. And I think that's the one I've been getting wrapped around the axle over the last month or so. They introduced this bill back in March. It wasn't going anywhere, really. It was being talked about. But then at the beginning of June, they tacked it on to another exemption, and it rode its way home to the governor and got signed. But first of all, before I start talking, are there any questions that y'all have had from looking over any of this documentation that I should address first?
I would just say GIS is part of what I do for a living. So, and it is everywhere I go in South Carolina, it's being inconsistently interpreted, inconsistently. Some are making them require they're producing to get the exemption. Some are just going through and taking everything that's ag off. And so I don't think there is a bright line rule for that.
I think you hit that on the head, that you've got 46 counties that might interpret this exemption a different way. Here, we're really sticking with the fact that they talk about a producer, and we've looked at so many definitions of producer, and almost each one of these guys, to get this exemption, you have to be a producer. And almost every definition you read of the producer, this has to be their primary source of revenue, essentially. It doesn't give you, say, it has to be, but that's what it's alluding to. It talks about commercial, it talks about business. Let's see, one of the ones we have, if we use South Carolina's in their agricultural section, and I think this is going to be important if your constituents talk to you about this, because there's a lot of properties that are 5 to 10 acres that have this special assessment as agricultural use, and they only have like a pole shed or an enclosed pole building on it. But in the definition in South Carolina law says a producer means any producer of agricultural products that are produced in the state. Then it goes on to say that a producer means any person engaged in the business of producing an agricultural commodity. It means a producer is able to sell these. It's not just I have my sweet chickens out here in a couple sheds and everything, and I tend to them each day, and I bring the eggs, and I bring them to my friends at work and things like that. But we're talking about the guys and gals with the chicken houses, the dairy barns, and things like that. What this law goes on to say, the way, if you take that memorandum from DOR, owned by a producer is the first thing, and then we're talking about livestock, poultry, crops, farm equipment, farm supplies, farm machinery, self-propelled machinery, and things like that. I think what y'all are probably interested in are numbers more so than what the law says. And back earlier this spring, I put together some numbers, and it was loosely based on without drilling down, we had about $818,000 in assessed value, which equated to almost $300,000 total in taxes. About half of that was schools, and half of that was real property taxes that could possibly be lost. I think we've whittled that down now that we're zeroing in on the producer and what these buildings are, that it'll probably be about half of that, but I can't guarantee that. What we see is that in Kinards, or that central middle western part of the county coming into the central part, about 28% of the properties are located in there as far as the values and assessments. That's going to be affected the most. That's tax district 3. Then we've got up in Whitmire coming down. They have about the second most, so those guys are going to be affected up there. And then we come in around the outside of the city are going to be about number 3. And then once we get out of there, then we're talking about minimal effect. Once you get out towards the lake, over towards Lake Greenwood and things like that, those are going to be less affected in terms of how much will be coming out of their pockets over there, and they'll have to make up for it. Any questions on that? So what I'd like to add to that is that this year we probably experienced more growth than we have in a long time in terms of added value from new construction. Of Newberry Landing in town, I know that doesn't affect every tax district, but Newberry Landing had a good many houses coming on board. I don't know if you've watched those houses go up over there, but they're going up like hotcakes, and they're nice. It's a wonderful little community. We had a new subdivision come on board this year, Stewart Landing. I don't know if you're familiar with that, out towards Lake Murray. Those are some nice parcels that are coming on board. You've got folks paying, anywhere from $200,000 to $275,000 for a lot on the lake, and you got them paying good money for the lots in the back. And I think the last time I talked to the developer, they were about 80% sold out. So that's a pretty big deal, and we just now are seeing the permits come in for the structures that go along with those. And those types of structures, we're talking about $300,000, $400,000 homes that are going to be coming on board there. So, while we might take a little bit of a hit with this, we do have other things that are coming on board to kind of minimize the hit. Now, they're not coming on specifically in Kinard and Whitmire and things like that, but the overall county budget, we do have value coming in. Let's see, the things that we've done to prepare for this, I don't know how much y'all want to get into the weeds on that. Of course, we're communicating with the assessors across the state. One of my latest communications today was, what about tenant houses? Tenant houses, are they an exempt agricultural structure?
You talked to Betty Etheridge today in Williamsburg County.
She was part of the conversation. But, I got responses from Horry County, Calhoun County, Chester County, on things like that. And so, the conclusion there is that tenant houses wouldn't be exempt. Because, think of that, they are housing the folks that are helping produce the crops and stuff, but it is a residential structure. It's not an agricultural structure that's used for the actual production. So the assessors around the state have been a big thing. DOR, of course, in their opinions. Kenny Shealy, one of the appraisers, he's the appraiser for the Kynerds area in the Tax District 3. We went out last week for a whole day and rode around and looked at these farms that are producers and talked with them. And one surprising thing about that is half of them weren't really aware of how this was going to work. I'm talking about folks like Mr. Setzler with his farm out there and, his poultry houses. We got dairy farms, huge production. They're not really sure how it was going to work. Then you had the young man who was helping his dad on his farm. He was very apprehensive about us coming there, but once we told him while we were there, he's like, "Oh yeah, nice to meet you." I don't know quite how they think we're going to manage making all this happen, but I guess they're just assuming we know how to do all this stuff. But what I will say, the appraisers now, we've taken the approach that we're identifying the counts, and we're taking them building by building on these structures to try and get the proper exemption out there. I don't think we're going to nail it by the time the tax bills go out. But what we're going to do is we're working hard on the producers and working our way down the list. So what I believe we're planning on doing is, if you start hearing from constituents as to why this hasn't happened or why this happened, is if it hasn't happened and they believe they deserve this exemption, we're going to ask them to complete a form, okay, and tell us what and why they believe that they should have that exemption. We'll probably ask for things like, do you file a Schedule F? That's your farm profit and loss. What crops do you produce? How long have you been producing them? Is this your primary business? If you're a timber, do you have a timber management plan? Now, all these things are not required, and if they don't have them, they don't have them. If they can't answer, they can't answer. But these would just be things that we would have to support the decision we make to exempt the structure from the taxation. So they might feel like that's an onus being put upon them, but I believe that it's only fair to do our due diligence to ensure that that structure really is a bona fide agricultural structure on that. We will be making field checks and be out in the field, so if you get calls on that, hey, why is somebody out there riding around? It's us riding around trying to get a gauge on what we've got out there as far as our inventory.
Okay.
Anything else?
Any questions
Mayor, you
from
wanna-
anybody?
Councilman Errol?
I'm glad it's you.
Clear as mud.
Yeah, it's about clear as mud, isn't it?
Yeah, it
That's the way I know
is.
this
It is
crowd.
about, it is. But I think we've read over this thing so many times and tried to look at it so many ways and gone down so many rabbit trails that after the more we talk and everything, we're convinced that it was for certain structures, that's the caption in the law said, and that it is really for the producers. I even went back and read several articles today that had been in the paper back in the spring, and again, it was the poultry farmers, the dairy farmers that really feel like they're in need of this exemption, that are the ones that this was focused for, even though it's not quite as specific in the exemption law as it should be, in my opinion.
Thank you very much.
All
Sounds
right.
like you've done a
Thank
great
y'all.
job doing your homework and due
Well-
diligence.
Thank
The
you.
staff is doing a great job. Thank y'all.
Next, we have an introduction. I won't go through the whole introduction, but we have an introduction.
Mr. Riley Hickman, our new Veterans Affairs Director, recently appointed by Senator Cromer, and he's going to introduce himself to council. We're excited he's on board.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, County Council, Mr. Administrator, thank y'all for having me. Like you said, my name is Raleigh Hickman. I was born in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Graduated from Bishopville High School. When I joined the military, I served in two forces. I served in the Army as well as the Navy. Followed my dad around when I was in high school. My dad's also was a city and county administrator during his over 30-year tenure in South Carolina. My mother retired as a financial director for Newberry. So I moved to Newberry. Love the town. Most importantly, I love helping veterans. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Angela Hickman, over there, and I have two daughters, Marley, 21, and Allie, 19. I also have three daughters from a previous marriage. Yeah, that total is 5. And I have 6 granddaughters and 1 grandson, and he's not spoiled at all, I promise. After I retired, like I said, I moved here to Newberry, and I've been lobbying for this job from David Parnell for 4 years or so. He'd tell me he was going to retire every year. I'm going to retire next year. He never did. So now I got lucky and got an opportunity to take this job. I wanted to take the time to thank Senator Cromer and Miss Terry Candace and Heather Durant, even though they're not here, for selecting me. And I want to thank Newberry County for welcoming me. Man, it's been awesome. For the people I haven't had the pleasure to meet, I look forward to working with, but the ones I have greeted me and treated me very well. To the meat and potatoes of being the Director of Veteran Affairs, it's a very important job. David Parnell has been exceptional in helping me getting in the right direction. He knows the job, and it's been great that he's able to stand by me and show me, because this job, it can't be taught in schools. It's forever changing. I mean, they just passed the PACT Act, so that entitles 2 million more soldiers to benefits that they deserve. So it's my job to make sure that they receive those benefits. He has a wealth of knowledge, David Parnell does, and if you know Dave, he don't mind telling you. So, I mean, I'm going to miss him when he's gone, and I'm going to utilize him while he's here. And I intend to continue to operate the Veterans Affairs Office here in Newberry and be the face of the Veterans Affairs Office and operate it respectfully, effectively, and efficiently to ensure that all my veterans receive all that they are entitled to. Remember, less than 1% of Americans join the armed forces. That's important to know, and it's my job to make sure their sacrifice does not go unnoticed. I look forward to working with each and every one of you. I am honored that I have been given this opportunity to serve our veterans. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Welcome
you.
to Newberry County Schools. Item number 3 on our agenda is a resolution to adopt an employee recognition and longevity salary adjustment policy.
Mr. Chairman, I can do this from table unless you prefer me at the podium, but as you all know, we all desire to recognize our employees every opportunity we get, and this addresses longevity for our employees that serve and stay with the county for long periods of time. We've had a practice of doing this. This resolution will codify a practice that modifies the previous practice to address some concerns that were raised previously. And so that's what's before you, and if you adopt this, we'll include it in the next edition of the employee handbook. And it provides, what it does is it provides for a 1% salary adjustment at every 10-year increment of service to the county, and that replaces a previous one-time payment. This would be a salary adjustment in lieu of that previous practice. And it also provides for, at every 5-year increments, an employee would be recognized at a county council meeting and be given a certificate of service and a pin at every 5-year increments.
Okay. Are there any questions from council?
Comparatively, with this ordinance versus the way we had previously been recognizing our employees for longevity, this is at least equal to or better than?
Oh, it's much better than, exponentially better. And I didn't run through the numbers, but this says that we would retroactively apply this to January, because when I came on board, it just kind of, we stopped doing it for whatever reason. So what our plan is to bring the employees from, there's actually one employee from December. I think the last time it was done was in November, if I recall correctly. And so we have one 5-year employee to bring forward for certificate and pin. And then in January, from January to June, we want to bring those employees to council at the September 7th meeting. The salary adjustment would go forward, would actually be implemented at the next pay period following the adoption of this resolution for all of those employees. And that will get us up to speed through the end of the fiscal year 22. And then at the September 21st meeting, we would bring the employees from July 1 to September and get get those employees before council, get their certificates, and make sure that their salary adjustment is implemented as well. And then we'll be all caught up.
Other questions?
So you're telling me somebody who's making $50,000 at 10 years is going to get $500, and somebody who's making $90,000 is going to get $900?
That's the 1% salary adjustment, yes, sir. And previously, there was a $100, $200, where's the other? $300, and $5 for a 40-year employee. So even though the low-end salaries are going to exponentially benefit from a 1% salary adjustment, and it'll also be compounded when COLAs are added and other salary adjustments are added.
So again, it's recurring.
Yes, yes.
And
The totals are in the packet. To get caught up from FY '22 would be an added $2,900 expense, and we projected for the current fiscal year $5,900 added expense. So a total of $8,900.
Were the department heads involved in drafting this, or was this strictly
There was some discussion with some department heads and elected officials. Not all of them.
So the rate, it's 1% for every 10 years, did I understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Not every, it starts at 10, but is it increment after 10 more, or is it 10, 15, 20, 25?
So the previous practice was in increments of 10 years was a monetary
So it was already in
gift.
10 years.
And so and I did put in my report that we should consider the monetary at every 5-year increment if budget allows us to do that sometime in the future. So I would love to have that conversation, but for tonight's purpose, we kept it at the 10-year increments, which was the past practice.
How many department heads did you talk with? Do you know?
Sir, I would say we had casual conversations with probably 3 of them.
I can't speak for the rest of the count. I think my comfort zone would be that, don't you have a monthly meeting or something with them?
Actually, I take that back. We were in a recent meeting where this was discussed with all of the department heads that were there. It was about 11. I think there was 1 elected official there, so.
Has there been any negative feedback?
The one concern that's been raised to me was that what Mr. Livingston commented about was that it's not a flat, that everybody gets the same amount, was the only criticism that I've heard. And my response to that is that even the low end of 1% of a $30,000 salary is $300, which I don't know of any employees that have worked here more than 10 years that are at that rate, but even if a 10-year employee was making $30,000, they would be getting 3 times as much in a salary adjustment as they were under the previous practice.
What was the highest on the old system?
$500 for a 40-year employee. Is that right, Debbie?
I'll just state I'll be voting against it because I think it's too much disparity amongst the employees.
Well, it could be
If it were,
1% up to $500 cap,
I'd be fine with that.
and that would cut it at everybody, 500 at least. And that would be equal to, or still equal to, or better than the old program.
And that wouldn't cost as much as what we projected it to cost.
I think that brings a lot more parity to what we're trying to do.
Or whatever the cap is, but I'm just saying we could cap it.
Would you make that in the form of a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion that, for this resolution, that we give 1% up to the amount of $500.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
My second.
Okay. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor by show of hands, and opposed likewise. And I think all of us join in the intent to recognize how awesome our county employees are and how much we appreciate their longevity and all that they do for this county. We don't compete in a lot of ways with the private sector as far as dollars sometimes, and so it's nice that they've been loyal and faithful through that, and so it's appreciated.
Thank you.
Item number 4 on our agenda is ordinance number 05162022, which is an ordinance establishing procedures and requirements for entering into development agreements in Newberry County. Have there been any changes to this since our first 2 readings?
No, sir.
This is the public hearing. I hereby declare the public hearing open. At this time, anyone wishing to speak in favor of or against this ordinance is welcome to come to the podium at this time. Seeing no one move, unless there's objection from council, I will declare the public hearing closed. Is there a motion as to third and final reading? Motion by Mr. Hipp, second by Mr. Shealy. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor by show of hands. Opposed likewise. Motion carries unanimously. Next on our agenda is ordinance number 0619-2022, which is an ordinance acting on a request to amend the official zoning map established pursuant to zoning ordinance number 122401 as revised and amended by zoning ordinance number 6-11-16 and codified in Chapter 153 of the Newberry County Code of Ordinances, establishing zoning classifications and districts so as to rezone one real estate parcel totaling 3 3.87 acres, designated as TMS number 28-1-1-6 from R2 rural to GC general commercial. Kate, is there any changes since last time? Okay. Did anyone come to the hearing for the posting? Okay. We declare the public hearing open at this point. Anyone wishing to speak in favor or of or against this ordinance is asked to come to the podium at this time. Seeing no one move, unless there's objection from council, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Is there a motion from council as to third and final reading? Motion by Mr. Shealy, and second by Mr. Hipp. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor by show of hands. Opposed likewise. That motion carries unanimously. Item number 6 on our agenda is ordinance number 07202022, which is an ordinance for the purpose of leasing out certain county fairground property. This is second reading. Is there an update on this, Mr. Inglese?
In your packet is the lease this time. So for first reading, the lease hadn't been completed, but the lease is in your packet this time. It is the same terms we discussed last time, $4,500 a month. Got to have the insurance certificate, it's name in the county. It's at least 18-month term, probably a 6-month extension will be added to that. Just as a parallel to this, we have put out a scope of work for bids to do the electrical work and a couple other minor construction work, and we got good news because the best bid came in about $17,000. So we'll be moving forward with that parallel, contingent on third and final reading of this lease agreement.
Okay. Is there a motion that this be second reading? Motion by Mr. Shealy, second by Mr. Reeder. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor by show of hands. Opposed likewise. Passes unanimously. Item number 7 on the agenda is discussion and possible approval of an RFP for external audit services. Lovely Miss Crystal Water.
Thank you. Per the last meeting, I was requested to reach out to the firm that submitted the proposal, Malden and Jenkins, and they agreed to come down $5,000. And the reason that they didn't come down any more than that, they indicated that their firm being new to the county is one reason, and that there's some additional Gatsby requirements regarding leases this year, in addition to what's required of the audit, as well as the firm retaining qualified employees on staff. You know, that's a problem everywhere, but that's what they agreed to come down to. $60,000.
And how much did we have budgeted for that? Do you recall?
41,000.
41?
40?
41?
40 or 41?
41.
41. Did you want to add anything to that?
I think we can absorb that difference and probably need to move forward in the interest of time. And if we can't, we'll deal with it in a budget ordinance later in the year if we have to, but I don't think we'll have to.
Are there questions from council?
What I understand is we could not get some of the other people that are on state contract because it was too late.
Correct,
So next year,
right.
we should not have this problem.
Gotcha.
And there are several of them on there, well, now.
It may be helpful if your motion includes that it's conditional for 1 year, so we can do this again next year, and if that's your wishes to, because I think it's a proposal for a 5-year contract.
It's an initial 3-year with option to
2
renew
years.
for 2 additional. But
Will
do
they
have
accept
that
a
option.
1-year contract?
Will they?
That's what,
Correct.
Will they accept a 1-year contract?
sir.
Oh, okay, all right.
well, my opinion is definitely that the time has come for us to have a different set of eyes. We've talked about this many times, and this is the best deal that's on the table for us. So we need a new audit firm, and we got an opportunity here. I'm all in favor of it.
They agreed to the 1 year for 60,000, that's not more for just 1 year, right?
No, it's 1 year, 60,000, they agreed.
And we only have 41,000 budgeted.
That's right.
All right, is there a motion regarding this matter?
I move to accept the proposed audit fees. I guess now, the original proposal was 65, and it's now reduced to 60?
60.
Okay. That we accept that and go forward with that audit firm.
Why were we late asking for bids, RFP?
I don't think we were all that late. This was the second time, if I remember. I have to look back and see.
Think that it went out to RFP rather than going through the state contract source, right? Just
Right.
released it as an RFP.
I didn't realize things were on that was on state contract.
Yeah, it wasn't
That was fairly new, and I didn't write the date down when it went on state contract. But the bid went out in June, but I believe we solicited before that. And we only had one response.
That's what I remembered was one.
So we resolicited.
right.
They do 19 of the counties already.
Okay. I think we have, if I remember right, we're at a motion. Okay, is there a second to the motion so we can open it up for discussion at that point? Reverend Scurry will second it. Now we can open it up for discussion.
Can we make this on contingent that we go out next year and look for another one on state contract?
Would you amend your motion to?
I'm
to say
sorry,
that?
what was that?
I have that contingent on next year going out to look for another one on state contract.
All the firms that are on state contract can give us pricing provided their schedule allows for us to be fit into their, workload.
We just probably need to get ahead of the curve next
Right.
year because everybody's getting their audits
Not gonna say we're
done
gonna
at the
stick
same
with them,
time.
but at least look at the ones on state
Sure.
contract.
Yeah.
But award them with the 1 year.
What were we previously paying?
I don't know.
I accept that
Pardon?
amendment to the motion.
We only have one, that was where we run into this
Risha
at.
and Zostica, who's been here.
They were doing the inside and the outside.
I guess we really don't have a choice.
We have a motion, Reverend Scurry, you were the second, will you amend your second to that? That it's a contingent one-year contract, with looking at a new contractor next year?
Agree.
Okay. Is there other discussion? Yeah, it's kind of like we backed up against a wall on this one, but
Yeah, we are this.
having the same vendor do the inside and the outside is kind of like having a fox watch the hen house, as my grandmother would say. So we definitely need to do that. So anybody else? Doesn't taste good, but I don't know that we got a whole lot of options at this point. All in favor by show of hands, and opposed likewise. Carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Item number 8 on our agenda is an executive session. We have 3 purposes for executive session under Code Section 30-4-70, Subsection A of the Code of Laws of South Carolina, amended in 1976. Subsection 1 of our executive session is the discussion of employment, appointment, compensation, promotion, demotion, discipline, or release of an employee, a student, or a person regulated by a public body, or the appointment of a person to a public body. However, if an adversary hearing involving the employee or client is held, the employee or client has the right to demand the hearing be conducted publicly. Nothing contained in this item shall prevent the public body in its discretion from deleting names of other employees or clients whose records are submitted for use at the hearing. The item subsection 2 for executive session is discussion of negotiations, instance for proposed contractual arrangements and proposed sale or purchase of property, the receipt of legal advice where the legal advice relates to a pending, threatened, or potential claim or other matters covered by the attorney-client privilege, settlement of legal claims, or the position of the public agency in an adversary situations involving the assertion of the agency of a claim. And our final purpose for our executive session is discussion of matters relating to the proposed location, expansion, or provision of services, encouraging location of expansion of industries or other businesses in the area served by the public body. Based on those announcements, is there a motion that we move into executive session?
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Shealy, second by Mr. Reader. Is there discussion? All in favor by show of hands. Opposed likewise. We will move into executive session by unanimous votes. We got stand-up motions on those. All in favor by show of hands. I'm not even asking discussion. Opposed likewise. We unanimously come out of executive session. Is there a motion of the council based on our executive session?
Would you like for me to make it, or
That'd be
somebody?
fun. Somebody make it.
Okay, I'd like a motion to create a full-time employee in the coroner's office as funded by the state of South Carolina and contingent upon funding from the state of South Carolina.
Is there a second to that motion? Okay. Is there a discussion about that motion? I would just like to say that, based on my notes from that, is that we are eliminating 2 part-time positions as part of that, and that the salary continuing not just this year, but every year is contingent upon the money coming from the state of South Carolina. If that money ceases, the position would cease, is my understanding. Is that the understanding?
And it is only earmarked for that. We can't use it for anything else.
That is correct. By that statute,
Yes.
that the money's being received on. Thank you, Mr. Livingston. Is there anything, and then there is no net cost
That's what I
to
was
the
gonna
county
say.
to do this. This is not gaining an employee, and there's no net cost to the county in doing this.
Confirmed.
Is that everybody's
That's it.
understanding of
Yes.
this?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, so that if anybody has any questions, we hopefully have clarified the record. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor by show of hands. Opposed likewise. The motion carries unanimously. Are there any other motions related to that, the executive session? Hearing none, no one had signed up for, I'm sorry, I skipped a point. Adoption of the consent agenda. I am really trying to get down the road. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda, which is the meeting minutes of July 20th, 2022?
I make a motion, we adopt the meeting agenda with any necessary corrections.
Okay, motion to adopt the consent agenda. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Shealy. Is there a discussion? All in favor by show of hands. Opposed likewise. Appointments, we'll start with Reverend Scurry. He got his hand up.
Don't have none.
Oh, no, he doesn't have one, okay. Mr. Reader, do you have any appointments?
I like to reappoint Vina Abrams to the Central Midlands Board.
There's a motion to appoint Vina Abrams to the Central Midlands Board. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Shealy. Is there discussion? All in favor by show of hands. Opposed likewise. Carries unanimously. Any other appointments, Mr. Reader?
That's it.
Any appointments, Mr. Hipp?
None.
Any appointments, Ms. Airwood? Any appointments, Mr. Livingston? Any appointments, Mr. Shealy? I have one appointment I would like to, it's actually a reappointment. I would like to reappoint Tommy Amick to the Airport Commission. Is there a second to my motion? There's a second by Mr. Reader. Is there discussion? All in favor by show of hands. Opposed likewise. That motion carries unanimously. Comments from the county administrator?
Just real briefly, we'll be at the fair next week. The county will have a couple booths. The voter registration will be there. We'll have a booth where Human Resources will be out recruiting. Animal Shelter will be there, as well as myself and Tommy, and I'm leaving somebody out. Parks, Jesse will be there. We got some cornhole boards made up, and we'll be raffling off another set of cornhole boards. But we'll have something fun to do, so please stop by and see us while we're out there. We also have been working on paperless stubs. I think I looked at a report today that said 43 employees are signed up, so we're not quite 20%, but we continue to work on that. And I'll be on WKDK tomorrow, where we'll be highlighting law enforcement and first responders in advance of 9/11 Remembrance Day. That concludes my comments.
Thank you. Will we be afforded the opportunity for the paperless stubs? I don't know that I've
Yes.
seen anything on that.
In
I'd like to
fact,
do that.
That was my note. We will forward you the instructions. It's a short, brief instruction.
Okay.
And if you need any assistance, we'll reach out to Debbie Peak, and she can just one-on-one help you. get set up for that. So actually, that was one of my questions for y'all. Are y'all ready to get those instructions?
I certainly
and take those
am.
out? And, yeah, we'll get those out this week.
Yeah.
Okay. Comments from council, we'll reverse order of Mr. Shealy,
No comment.
Mr. Livingston,
Nah.
no, Ms. Airwood, Mr. Hip,
No.
Mr. Lear, nothing, Mr. Evans Scurry. No. I did just extremely brief because we've been so long. I did have the opportunity to attend the economic development meeting, I'm losing my dates. Was that Monday night or last night? I've lost my night.
Monday night.
Monday night, last night. Last night.
Last night, because I was at the one Monday and one of us wasn't there.
It was Monday, but.
When Whitmire was last night.
Whitmire was last night. I thought it was very well done, and I was well pleased with the turnout from the community and the input that it had, so appreciate those. Future meetings, County Council meeting, September the 7th, Finance Committee meeting on September the 12th, County Council on September 21st, and Public Safety Committee on September 26th. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Ms. Airwood, second by Mr. Shealy. All in favor by show of hands. Opposed likewise. Carries unanimous.